Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the fascinating neuroscience behind cravings, and more importantly, we're going to discover exactly how to overcome them, completely without relying on willpower. So, whether you're looking to cut back on a stubborn habit yourself, or you're just endlessly curious about how the human brain actually wires itself, you are absolutely in the right place. Let's get into it.
Right off the bat, we've got to ask ourselves a pretty fundamental question. Why does white-knuckling your way through a craving always seem to fail us in the end? Seriously, why does sheer determination so rarely lead to lasting change? Well, the answers don't lie in your character, they actually lie deep within our biology.
In today's Explainer, we are going to identify your personal drinking pattern. We'll debunk the willpower myth, explore the actual neuroscience of a craving, look at the 30-minute ceiling, and teach you a clinical tool called urge surfing to help build healthier habits.
Section 1. Identify your drinking pattern. It is time to hold up a mirror to our habits.
So, behavioral health research shows us that there are 4 distinct patterns when it comes to how we interact with alcohol. First up, we've got social drinkers. They usually moderate and primarily drink just to connect with others. Then, there are conformity drinkers. These are folks drinking largely just to fit in or avoid feeling left out. Third, we have enhancement drinkers. They're the ones chasing a high or a buzz. And finally, coping drinkers, who are actively using the substance to manage pain, stress, or really difficult emotions.
Now, understanding the critical difference between those last two is incredibly important. You see, drinking to enhance a good mood versus drinking to cope with a bad one, well, they might look completely identical from the outside, but neurologically, they are very, very different. Coping drinking carries a significantly higher risk for dependency. Why? Because it acts as a form of self-medication, completely bypassing the actual root causes of our stress.
Moving on to Section 2, the willpower myth. Let's uncover exactly why society has lied to us.
Here is the absolutely crucial point we need to understand. Willpower is a finite resource. It's literally exactly like a muscle that gets exhausted over time. Think about it. When you're stressed out, tired, or emotional, that muscle weakens. So relying on it to fight an intense craving is completely unsustainable. It's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. It works for a little while, sure, but eventually it is going to pop back up, and usually with way more force than before.
Because of this reality, we urgently need to strip away the shame. Addiction is not a moral failing. It's not a character flaw. It's actually a biological, recognized medical condition. In fact, research shows that up to 50% of the likelihood of addiction forming is linked directly to genetic factors. It's a brain disorder, not just a simple choice. And that means we need a scientific solution, not just more hustle or grit.
Which brings us to Section 3, hijacking the brain. Let's take a look at the actual neuroscience of a craving.
Okay, so when a craving hits, your mind basically tells you that you desperately need to drink just to survive or just to feel normal. But what's actually happening is a hostile takeover of your brain. The substance hijacks your mesolimbic dopamine pathway, which is essentially your brain's core reward center, and it creates this massive artificial surge of urgency. But here's the crazy part. At the exact same time, it suppresses your prefrontal cortex. Why does that matter? Because your prefrontal cortex is the exact part of your brain responsible for impulse control and rational decision-making. You're literally fighting a rigged game.
To visualize what's going on, think of your neural pathways like a dense forest. Over time, repeated habits carve out a super wide, clear, and easy-to-follow path. A craving is simply your brain automatically suggesting that wide, well-worn trail it's used so many times before to find a quick reward. It's not a command you have to obey. It is just a heavily biased suggestion based on your past behavior.
Section 4. The 30-minute ceiling. Because cravings are strictly temporary.
Now, this fact changes absolutely everything. Clinical research proves that a craving operates exactly like an ocean wave. It does not just build indefinitely until you finally give in. If you don't act on it, it will trigger, it'll build, it'll peak right around the 15-minute mark, and it will completely subside within 30 minutes. Every single time.
Section 5. How to urge surf. Let's look at a clinical tool you can use to actually ride that wave.
Knowing this 30-minute ceiling exists brings us to a highly effective mindfulness technique originally developed at the University of Washington, known as urge surfing. And it is a real game changer. Rather than fighting the urge, which honestly only feeds it more energy, or trying to desperately escape the discomfort, you surf it. You just sit as an observer, allowing the intensity to peak and fall on its own. And here's the best part. Every single time you do this, you actively rebuild the inhibitory control in your prefrontal cortex. You are literally, physically rewiring your brain.
So how do we actually do it in the moment? Well, here are the 5 steps. First, you pause and literally name the urge out loud. Just say, I notice an urge. Second, locate it physically in your body. Is your jaw tight? Is your chest feeling heavy? Third, simply observe the wave as it builds, completely without judgment. Fourth, stay present and just breathe. Do not react. And finally, just ride it out until it falls, which, as we know, is going to happen within that 30-minute window.
Now you might be thinking this sounds too simple, but this step-by-step process isn't just a mental trick. It utilizes something called interoceptive awareness. This means that the simple clinical act of locating and naming the physical tension in your jaw or your chest, it immediately reduces the emotional intensity. By giving the sensation a specific name, you are pulling power away from the panic center of your brain and handing it right back to your rational prefrontal cortex.
Section 6. Building healthier habits. It's time to talk about becoming a trail builder.
Okay, so to help bridge that 15 to 30-minute window while you're urge surfing, you can rely on cognitive behavioral techniques, like the 5 Ds. So if you feel an urge, delay acting. Distract yourself with a neutral task. Drink a glass of water to change your physical state. Do something physically different, like, going for a quick walk or stretching, and decide to reassess how you feel once the peak passes. These act as incredible tools to distract your brain while the wave crashes.
Ultimately, the whole goal here is to become a trail builder in your own mind. When a trigger like stress pops up, your brain is going to automatically suggest that old trail, like grabbing a drink. But by urge surfing, you can consciously choose to carve out a brand new, healthier path, like taking a 15-minute walk. With consistency, that new trail becomes a paved highway, and the old trail, it eventually just overgrows and disappears.
So now that you know the actual neuroscience behind the craving wave, and you have the practical tools to surf it rather than fight it, the power is entirely in your hands. You really don't have to rely on a broken concept of willpower anymore. The only question left is, which new path will you build today?